Hello everyone. Good evening to you all. A wonderful day, all of you. Welcome to Institute of Global Professionals platform. Thank you for joining us another live session, free international webinar in IGP. We have completed 310 webinars successfully. I am Kamrul from Bangladesh. Today I will be presenting webinar number 311. Today topic is speaking fluency and accuracy of students. Today we have a powerful speaker from Philippines. So one second. Without delay, we welcome our ma'am. Hello, ma'am. Good evening.
Good evening.
How are you,
Good
ma'am?
evening, everyone. Good evening. So, let me introduce myself before I start my discussion from this evening. But please let allow me to greet and to give honor to those who are actually watching us now from different sides of the world, from different countries that we have. Let me greet you good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. For my fellow Filipino professionals, magandang gabi po sa ating lahat.
Thank you,
So, can
ma'am.
we now, thank you. Can we now start our discussion, sir?
Yes, ma'am. You can start your presentation.
Okay. I am now presenting, sir. Can you now see my presentation? Okay. So again, good afternoon, everyone. Let me just briefly introduce myself to everyone. So I am Ross Ann Omali Ramos from Department of Education, Rizal Province in the Philippines. So I am handling senior high school students from the Humanities and Social Sciences strand. I am a graduate in my baccalaureate degree. I am a graduate of Bachelor of Secondary Education, major in English. And I am also now a graduate of Master of Arts in Teaching, major in English also. So let me share to you what I have thought regarding my study regarding the speaking fluency and accuracy of students. So to begin with, let me ask everyone. So we are now on our discussion for this evening. So let me ask you, is it more important to be accurate or to be fluent? We are talking about the language, the speaking language. Is it more important if we give more focus on being accurate, or is it more proper if we are more focused on being fluent of our student? So let me define first what is communication. So communication is an indispensable tool in promotion of learning. It is a tool for all. Through communications, ideas are shaped and concepts are formed. Now, we all know that the main target of every educational institution is to give quality education. And for us to give quality education, we are all aiming that our students should be a good communicator. Because since if you are a good communicator, you are managing to express your ideas, your concepts, and the things that you wanted actually to share in class. So, as a teacher, the demand of the excellence of education is the main intent of every educational institution. So, its main target is to improve the full potential of our students. So, realizing that Education is the gateway of a better future towards our learner and towards our community or our country. It's the responsibility of the educators, the teachers, the institutions to provide the best quality of education towards our students. And we can only give that to our students if they are globally competitive. And how can we say that our students are globally competitive? Number one is they should be good communicator. So moving forward, the belief that learning or what way I'm excuse me. Okay. I'm doing it again. Can you now hear me po? I'm sorry, I don't know why I don't have audio. Can you now hear me? Can you now hear me po? Okay, thank you. Sige, I would just be removing my earphone so that everyone could so I would be audible, sorry. So again, let me start my should I start again with the beginning? Okay. Okay, so speaking fluency and accuracy of students. So I will be introducing again myself in a brief manner so you could actually hear me. I'm sorry if I didn't know that I was not audible earlier. So I am Ross and Umali Ramos from Department of Education, Rizal Province in Philippines. Way back in my baccalaureate days, I have graduated the Bachelor of Secondary Education, major in English, and now I'm also a graduate of Master of Arts in Teaching, major in English, on our University of Rizal System here also in Rizal Province, Philippines. So let me just again discuss it to you. Is it more important before we move on with our discussion? Let me just ask you, is it more important to be accurate or to be fluent? What should we be focusing on our classroom? What should be focusing especially on our language class or on our English class? Is it more important that our students are accurate, or is it more important that our students are fluent? So defining communication first before we move on with the discussion of those being accurate and being fluent. Communication is an indispensable tool in promotion of learning. It is a tool for all. Through communication, ideas are shaped and concepts are formed. So the demand of excellence for education as the main target or the main intent of every educational institution. And its main target is to improve the full potential of our students by making them develop and the competencies, especially the speaking competencies, the competencies regarding comprehension skills relevant to the needs of learning. So realizing that education is the gateway for a better future and a better learners respond. It is our responsibility as as educators to give or provide our students the quality education that they need. So once a student is a good communicator, he or she can able to express him or herself in front of her classmates, in front of class. So um, the belief that learning begins with a learner is an axiom, increasingly reflected worldwide in a broad range of educational contexts. In language classrooms, educators are reminded daily that learners don't all learn the same way or in a consistent manner. We all know, especially me in my class, since I'm handling also a language and English class, it is a reminder daily for me that I should always manage to promote learning in class. So it is my duty that each and every one of my class is learning, that nobody shouldn't be left behind when I am discussing in my class. So it's not really important whether on how your student whether your student how can they manage to learn in that particular manner, but at least your main target is to make them learn something. Okay, so students, it was according to it was for example, it was according to Noonan way back on his study in 2007, one of his books. He describes it a metaphor or of organic learning. And Gardner, way back in 2011, proposes a theory of multiple intelligences. So we all know that there are different intelligences of our students. We have uh, multiple intelligences by Howard Gardner, which is a bodily kinesthetic, the interpersonal, the logical mathematics, the naturalistic, the interpersonal, the visual spatial, the musical, and of course the word smart or the verbal linguistics. So our students are learning based from the learns best based from the intelligence that they actually outstand most. So, um, regarding discussing with these multiple intelligences, it was also described that it was also prescribed that the macro skills that we are now having, before we only have the four macro skills. I know some all of us are already aware of this, that we have the listening, speaking, reading, and writing macro skills, but then it was rearranged and viewing is already added. It is because the 21st century learners that we have now are those students who actually learns best while watching or viewing something. So instead of forcing them to read something, instead of forcing them to listen to something, it should be we should actually adjust for the intelligences that they actually have. So it's our duty to uplift the learnings that we have, to guide them and to provide this learning based on the intelligences that they have. So in the fields of English as a second language or ESL and English as a foreign language or EFL, they facilitated language acquisition that have shifted their focus from the characteristic of the language and the methods of teaching to learners' characteristic. So instead of focusing into the characteristic of the language and the methods of teaching, we are now focusing on the learner's characteristics. So we are now focused on our students for them, we should be the one to adjust for them to learn easily with what we are teaching in our classroom. So for example, in English as a second language in ESL, here in the Philippines, we are considered as we are under the ESL because we are really considering English as a second language. In fact, as early as our primary grades, primary schoolers, we are already having the subject English in our curriculum. While in other countries, I will not be name dropping any name of the country, but then there are some countries who is under the EFL or they considered English as a foreign language. In those particular areas, we cannot force the students to speak English as if it is they are just communicating to everyone as if it is just their second language because they are not forcing, some countries do not force their students to learn English because for them it is a foreign language. Although we all know that to be globally competitive, we must be into second language, or to be globally competitive, we should be um, at least we should have the comprehension of the English language. Okay, so instead of just focusing to the characteristic of the language, we should be more focusing on the learner's characteristics, on how we can actually help them um, to learn this particular language. So according to Noonan in 2012, successful oral communication involves a number of important features. This includes the development of fluency and the ability to manage both transactional and interactional dialogue. So, successful oral communication involves a number of these features. We shouldn't just be focusing on fluency alone, and we shouldn't only be focusing on accuracy alone. This fluency and accuracy should always come hand in hand. You cannot be fluent without being accurate, and you cannot be fluent without being accurate. This particular features should always come hand in hand. So we shouldn't be more focusing rather on fluency alone and on accuracy alone. So discussing about transactional and the interactional dialogue. So transactional dialogue is having a dialogue or a conversation to somebody who is actually at a higher position or who is not really your acquaintance. So if you are talking to somebody, let's say for example, it is a boss and parang an employer and an employee type of dialogue or conversation. You are talking to somebody who is not really close to you, so the choices of words that you are using is very formal. While if you are in an interactional dialogue, it means that you are talking to somebody who is an who is an acquaintance, who is somebody who is close to you, somebody that you used to know. Because the choices of words that we use or the vocabulary that we use is different from those people whom we are talking to in a formal manner and for an informal manner. I'm not saying that informal in a sense that it is your friend. What I am saying is the choices of words are different, diba? So, speaking accuracy and speaking fluency, just like what I have mentioned earlier, these two should always come hand in hand. We cannot separate one from another. Just like what I have mentioned earlier, you cannot just focus on the accuracy and let it alone be accurate. And you cannot, on the other hand, you cannot focus on fluency and be fluent all along without being accurate. So, talking about fluency and accuracy, it should always be considered as important variables of communication. So, what I am saying is that fluency and accuracy should always be in together important variables of the communication. So, talking about fluency first, fluency in the language means speaking easily, reasonably, quickly without having to pause and stop a lot. So there are some students who manage to if there are some students who are really good in talking, but then they are having this particular stage fright, that once that they are talking or they are facing the whole class or they are facing somebody who is not really a friend of them, they tend to lose the words that they are about to say because although they are fluent because they can actually speak easily and reasonably, but because of those particular stage fright, we are losing the words that we are actually wanted to mention in front of everyone. So fluency means speaking easily and reasonably quickly without having to pause a lot. So moving on, fluency is defined as being able to speak and write quickly or easily in a given language. It comes from the Latin word fluentum, meaning to flow. So, one characteristic that a person could be considered now to be fluent is if you manage to talk spontaneously without stopping a lot, without hesitation, or without as if you are just a natural speaker of that particular language. So to speak and write quickly. But then I would always say that since I am a major before I was a former advisor of the school paper journalism in our school, I will not say that writing is really easy, but then it's quite hard also. But then speaking in front of everyone, let's say you are doing a public speaking or a class speech, it is more difficult to speak because when speaking, you need to let the you need to at least let the flow of your speech to be spontaneous. That once you stop, it's as if you are being hesitant, and then what comes up at the minds of your listeners is as if you are not really sure with what you are talking. If you are having a lot of pauses, a lot of stops with your speech, it is as if that you are not quite sure with what you are saying. Now, speaking fluency pertains to the ability to produce the spoken language without undue pausing or hesitation. So moving on with speaking accuracy, to demonstrate the extent to which the language produced conforms to the language norms under which the appropriate use of pronunciation, vocabulary, and grammar are subsumed. So comparing it to the speaking fluency, when we are talking about speaking fluency, it is just on the spontaneous, the flow, on how you are actually managing to talk in front of everyone in a manner that as if you are relaxed and you are easily to cope up with the words that you are about to say in front of everyone. But then if you are talking about the speaking accuracy, it is actually concerns with the correct pronunciation, the appropriate vocabulary, the appropriate grammar that you are about to use. So in speaking accuracy, we are more on the technical side. Okay, so we are more on considering what is the correct subject and verb agreement to be used, what is the correct vocabulary to be used, and the grammar that we are about to use. So, moreover, accuracy is speaking with a high level of accuracy means making very few mistakes. So, accuracy refers to how correct the learner's use of the language system is, including their use of the grammar, the correct pronunciation, and vocabulary. So, there are times that, of course, we have to cope up in the sense of the speaking fluency because sometimes although you are committing errors if you are talking, if you are really coping up, or if you are really a person who managed to cope up for words to fill in the gaps or the pauses that you make, it's not it it wouldn't be as a possible mistake, or as if you are it is really known by your audience that I something went wrong with her or with his speech. But then in accuracy you are talking as if you should be including all the correct grammar, the pronunciation, and the vocabulary. And we all know, I am talking to the Filipinos, for example, we are very much um, those type of listeners who actually look for the grammar mistakes of those who are talking. I think I don't know if it is already a culture of us that we are really those people who wanted these speeches of English to be precise, accurate, and correct at all times. But then being a teacher, you should be adjusting for your students, that not all the time they wouldn't be making mistakes. So you should be open minded that as long if the grammar is incorrect, if the grammar is not really perfect 100%, you should be considering as long as it is a speech, because it's very hard to talk in front of everyone without committing any errors. Even me as a teacher, I used to have mistakes, grammar errors. Although I am a teacher of language, I am a teacher of English, I wouldn't say that I am not committing any grammatical flaws once I am talking. Okay, so there are times that you manage to know that I'm sorry, I stand corrected because my grammar isn't correct. But then there would be a lot of times that you wouldn't be actually noticing that you are committing such error. Okay, so accuracy is often compared to fluency when one talks about learners' level of speaking or writing. In speaking, it's a bit hard, just like what most of my students, I would always ask them, class, which would you find more difficult? Is it writing or speaking? And they would always say, ma'am, it's always speaking. Teacher, it's always speaking. Then I would ask them why. Because for them, speaking is it is as if you are in a pressure box, that as if you are the center of attraction of everyone, that once you commit mistakes you might be a laughing stock in front of class. Then I would always say that we shouldn't be promoting that type of culture, that if our students are committing errors or grammatical mistakes, we can actually correct them in an instant. We can correct them, but then let's be uh, let's be those people who correct them in a way that they wouldn't be hurt as much as what most of our students do, who would actually murmur a lot, who would be hushing something to their seatmates, or who would actually make that particular student a laughing stock on class. And then it would be a trauma, it would be traumatizing for our student, remembering one of my former students whom I called for an oral communication. This was before the pandemic. I call him for a certain recitation in front of class. And then since he was a parang he was like a Visaya. Parang the dialect is different from the dialect that we have in Luzon, in Central Luzon, which is Tagalog. There's the pronunciation of the words from him is different from most of my students, from the rest of my students. And what other students did was they actually laughed. And then I told them class. And then I make that student stop to recite in class. And then I stop the recitation and I instantly tell my class that that shouldn't be the case. Okay? Because everyone might, we have our different dialects. And speaking in English, speaking in a fluent manner, in an in an accurate manner does not rely on the dialect itself. As long as it is correct, as long as you could be understood by the rest of the class, there's no need to laugh. That is what I always say, because that's my one of the major problem that I usually encountered in my language class. That's why most of the students are really afraid to talk in front of the class. They are really afraid to speak in English. They can actually comprehend what you are discussing in front, although you are discussing in English. They can actually comprehend. They can understand what you are saying. But once you ask them to share the ideas that they have, they wouldn't talk because they are afraid. They have this, I don't know if they have the stage fright, but what I know is they are afraid to share the ideas because they are afraid that what will be they'll be mentioning in front of the class will be corrected by some of their classmates. The others some of their words would be mispronounced, or they might be doing grammatical errors, and that shouldn't be the case. That's I always encourage my students to talk in front of class, to try harder, and to try to express themselves even though there are some grammatical errors. As long as it's their idea, we can correct it one by one without hurting somebody else in the class. So oral communication is not just simply reading a written text out loud. It is an interactive and real-time experience. So oral communication, it is not just reading a poem or something written in your notebook. That I would always say that to my class. It's not just about reading aloud in class, but it's it's a communication. There should be a sender, there should be a receiver. It is an interactive and real-time experience because you are talking, you are exchanging ideas with your classmates, you are exchanging ideas with your professor, with your teachers, and that is oral communication. It could be speaking, okay, it could be written, as long as it's an oral communication. It could be verbal or non-verbal, as long as you are changing the ideas and you are expressing yourself, it's already interactive. So according to the study of Darakshan et al. Way back 2016, speaking is the production skill that is included in two main categories, the accuracy and fluency. Accuracy consists of using vocabulary, grammars, and pronunciation through some activities, while fluency take into account the ability to keep going when speaking spontaneously. So this is what I am mentioning earlier, that accuracy is consisting of the vocabulary, the grammar, the pronunciation, and all the technical steps of the language. While when we are talking about fluency, it is about the ability to keep going when speaking spontaneously. When doing this particular talk in front of class, in front of everyone else, when you are nervous, although you have the ideas at the back of your mind, once that you get nervous, suddenly it all went black. So although you have the idea, although you make it as a practice, you already practice your speech 100 times. If you let that nervousness takes into you, then you wouldn't be speaking spontaneously in front of everyone, and that is fluency. So factors, what are the factors to consider in assessing the oral language ability of our students? So in oral accuracy, we are into pronunciation and vocabulary. I didn't include so much of the grammar, because when you are speaking, just like what I have mentioned earlier, it's not really what you are it's not really about the grammars that you are using, but as long as you could be understood by the rest of the crowd, it's okay. That is what I am always mentioning with my students. Class, please do not be conscious with your grammar. As long as you pronounce it right, as long as your vocabularies are well chosen, it's okay. And with the oral fluency, segmental stress, speech rates, and the gap fillers. So let me discuss it to you one by one, the oral accuracy factors and the oral fluency factors. So, in pronunciation, according to Carter and Noonan way back in 2001, they noted that errors in pronunciation that learners of English from different language backgrounds make are systematic and not accidental. So, there are some instances that students tend to have errors depending on the dialect that they are using. We cannot judge somebody if this particular person mispronounce a word. Okay, let's say this person can actually talk in English, but then they're in their country, they don't pronounce it the way that you pronounce it in your country, and that's okay. So it should be a practice to everyone that we shouldn't be making fun of those people who mispronounce word. If we can correct them, if we can correct them in a very nice manner of correcting them, then we can actually correct them. Okay, so let me give you an example of this particular mispronunciation of words commonly done by our students. So this is in the technical aspect. In the substitution of the letter or the sounds of letter P and letter F, and with letter B and letter V, or vice versa. The example words are base, vase, pat, and fat. So these particular words, these are the common mispronounced sounds and words of my students. This is according to my study of this particular speaking fluency and accuracy. Most of my students mispronounce this P, the sound of P, the sound of F, and the sound of B, and the sound of V. So sometimes most of my students would say base instead of vase and pat instead of fat. So these are common mistakes, common mispronunciation of words that we can actually correct. What I did with my students who actually always, most of the time they are committing this error, what I did is I gave them an assignment of a tongue twister. I know this is very elementary. This is very basic for me. And I know for the rest of you, because we are now professionals, all of us. So for our student, I could say that this could be a lot of help for them. Instead of correcting them each and every day with your class of the mispronunciation of the word P, F, B, and V, why not give them a tongue twister with letter P, with a lot of letter P, and with a lot of letter F? So you could actually help them practice the P and the F. Okay, so moving on. we are now on the vocabulary. So on the vocabulary, according to Houghton, way back in 2008, vocabulary consists of the words we understand when one hear or read them, respective vocabulary and words we speak or write. So vocabulary is according to this, according to my own experience as a teacher, as a language teacher, there are words that our student repeatedly use most of the time. Okay, so there are some students, we cannot say that those students are lacking of vocabularies. Maybe they are just nervous, that's why they are always mentioning that particular or that redundancy of words. But then what I did with my student is I asked them to read a lot. Being a wide reader actually helps a lot. I'm not actually forcing them to read literatures. I'm not forcing them to read this Greek mythology literatures who are very long. What I am saying to them is that you can actually read English magazines, whether if you are into songs, you can actually read them instead of just or in Facebook or in internet. They could actually read something so they could actually wide up their vocab. So for example, let me give you this example. So a word frequency of use and is um it's under the frequency of words if you are using this word repeatedly, or the complexity of the meaning of the words. So for example, instead of saying another choice, most of my students or some of the students use alternative option. So instead of saying to fly, you can use to travel by air. This is actually saying the frequency or the word is being common and the words you have chosen or the vocabulary is complex. This is actually how you can see if your student is a wide reader. I was actually impressed by most of my students who are into online games. We all know that most of our students, especially in the senior high school, in our handling students, they are into online games. And what I've noticed is that if that particular student is into online games, there are a lot of words which are not really common that they are using. And then when I ask them, where did you learn that particular language? And they would say, teacher, I've learned it from the online games that I am playing. It's very good. It's very good that they are at least utilizing those choices of words from what they enjoy doing and then using it in our classroom. So I don't I am not a teacher who is actually against online games, but at least I'm looking into the brighter side that some of my students are learning from those online games. Instead of just wasting their time, at least they are learning something. And I am happy that they are using that with the choices of words or the vocabulary that they are using in our class. So moving on, for the segmental in speech, characteristics are the division of the phrases of words while speaking. A sentence might change its meaning if the segmental is inappropriate. So segmental naman is all about the phrasing of words in our sentences. We all know that once you misdivide the phrases on your sentences, it might change the meaning. That is how complex language is. Okay, so according to Ramelan, this is according to Ramelan 2004, way back in a study that classifies sounds into segmentals. So here is my example. As you can see, I have my example of the same sentence but with different phrasing. The first sentence is, Mother Lisa, my friend. And the next one is, Mother Lisa, my friend. So the phrasing is different. As you can see, excuse me, for the first sentence, mother was introduced to the speaker's friend, which named Lisa. While the other sentence, The mother was named Lisa and was introduced to a speaker's friend with no name. So that's the example that phrasing could actually change the meaning of a sentence. Most of us, I'm not, most of my students usually did this particular false in their phrasing of the sentences. I would always say that class, you need to put the correct comma, you need to put the correct pauses in your sentences if you really wanted to give the correct meaning of that particular sentence. You shouldn't be pausing a lot in your sentences. You shouldn't be putting a lot of comma in your sentences. Why? Because if you do such, then the meaning of your sentence would be in a juncture form, in a sense that it would be divided, it would be subdivided, and the meaning of the sentence or of your sentence might be incorrect or might be not really what you pertained to mean. Okay, so moving on, stress. So stress is the degree of force which a sound or a syllable is uttered. It is classified as moderate stress with no symbol and weak stress. So as an example, we are very much familiar with the different stress of words, the verb, the noun, where should we put our stress. So the example is, we will desert the desert tomorrow. So as you can see, you have there the word. I really put the same words in my sentence just to give emphasis on the stress itself. So the first desert is a verb. It is stress. So meaning to say it is a verb. While the second word desert is a noun, which is a name of place. It is unstressed. So if you will mispronounce the stress, or if you will put the stress on the wrong place of the syllable of the word, then the meaning of the word might be changed. Another example are the words, or is the word project and project. It's different. If you say project, it's a noun. You have to project in the camera. While if you say project, it's a noun. It's the name of what you do in school. For example, it's your project. It's different from project. So we in language, or those especially who are teaching language, should or are really familiar with this. We are really familiar with stress. I am always saying in my class that, class, know your stress. It's not stress about having your headache, but it's a stress of giving the first syllable, the second syllable, or the third syllable of your words, because stress could really change the meaning of the words. Okay, so with the speech rate. So speech rate, a good speech rate ranges between 140 to 160 words per minute. So there's a measurement. So a good rate now is normally lies between 140 to 160 words per minute. So lower than that, it's too slow. It's not really a good rate of speech range. But if you exceeded to 160, then it could be difficult for your listeners to absorb with what you are talking. Okay, so as an example, is the measurement of the word per minute. So 130 could be considered still as an average speech rate. 100 word per minute would be a slow speech rate. And then if you are 160, if you reach 160 and above 160, then that is already a fast speech rate, meaning you cannot be fully understood, or those what you are talking would, you might be talking too fast that most of your listeners cannot comprehend what you are saying. it's not as if that you are not clear with what you are saying. It's just that it is too much to be comprehended by your listeners. So what are the variations in speed? Why are there instances that we speak too slow, too fast, and fast? So this is one of the variations in speed. So if you speak slow, it projects characteristics such as calmness, acceptance of others, and formality. While if you are speaking too fast, it projects an image of dullness, littleness, apathy, laziness, and sometimes lack of intelligence. That's why I always make it a point in my class, the class, if you wanted to say something or discuss something in class, you should speak clearly and in a good speech rate. Okay, so if you're talking fast, it projects animation, enthusiasm, excitement, and informality. So sometimes if we are very much eager with what we are talking, we speak fast. If we are excited with the good news that we wanted to share with somebody whom we are talking to, we speak fast. Okay, but then if you speak too fast, it suggests nervousness, tension, anxiety, or a flightly personality. Maybe you are not really at ease while you are talking. So this particular speaking speeds would actually measure our speech rate. Okay, so for the gap fillers are words that are defined as the utterances that fill the gaps and cuts during spontaneous conversations. So technically, according to Google, these are disfluencies. Disfluencies include any various breaks, irregularities, or utterances that are cut off mid utterances. So before I give you my example, I wanted to share this particular video that I have watched in YouTube. So let me share my screen to you regarding this video. Okay, okay, let me again play it for you. Thank you for So again, thank you for bearing with me with the video itself. So moving on with our discussion. So gap fillers are words that are defined as the utterances that fill the gaps in caps during spontaneous conversation. I hope you enjoyed that particular video of TED-Ed. I was a fan of TED-Ed. I always use it in my class because I found it so informative. So I always make it a habit of looking for words or for some videos that could actually help me in discussing my discussions. So for the examples, do you know what the homework was? I was wondering if I left my keys at home, just like what was discussed in the video that I have presented from TED Ed. We cannot say that this particular gap fillers are incorrect. They are disfluencies They are some others considered it as errors, but then just like what we have mentioned in the video, it's actually helping those students to look or to fish out of the words, of the correct words that they have to say. They manage to look for words, they manage to search for words or to fish of words that would actually follow their speech. So we cannot say that those gap fillers are errors. Okay, so according to International Language Testing System or IELTS, for those who are not aware, IELTS are the language testing that we usually that the global community is using to test our English language ability. So language tests are used for many purposes in many contexts and imposed as one of the important aspects in professional life. So for example, in America, they have to pass the IELTS test before they could actually apply for a job that includes language. It could be in the offices or it could be a formal job in US. So a discussion regarding language tests cannot be separated from international English language testing system or the IELTS. The test of enhancing as a foreign language or TOEFL test, both tests are almost the household of the professional circles. So the IELTS is designed to test one language proficiency. And so the best way to study is by exposing to as many native English speaking resources as possible. Maybe you are most of the millennials nowadays, or those what we call the pandemic babies, most of the youngsters today, they manage to speak well in English because they are watching a lot of English movies or English cartoons in YouTube, in different platforms of social media. And I think it's a great help for the teachers. I think it's a great help that we are exposing our students to learn the second language or the English language by just viewing this particular shows on the internet. So let me share to you the bond description of IELTS. In my study, the speaking of fluency and accuracy of students, I have used this band description. This band description actually identifies the level and the description and the interpretation of the ability of a certain student or of a certain speaker on whether what band or where rank in the band they are actually into. So for number 9, you have there the expert user, meaning has fully operational command of the language, appropriate, accurate, and fluent with complete understanding. So for number 8, they are considered as the very good user. They have fully operational command of the language with only occasional and systematic inaccuracies and inappropriate words. Misunderstandings may occur in unfamiliar situations, but handles complex, detailed argumentation well. So if you're under 7, you are considered as a good user. It has a one should has an operational command of the language, though with occasional inaccuracies, inappropriate words, and misunderstanding in some situations, but generally handles complex language well and understands detailed reasoning. So for number 6, for band number 6, it is identified as a competent user, meaning one has a generally effective command of the language, despite of some inaccuracies, inappropriate words, and misunderstanding, but can use and understand fairly complex language, particularly in familiar situations. So for number 5, you have the modest user. Modest users has partial command of the language, coping with overall meaning in most situations, though is likely to make many mistakes, but should be able to handle basic communication in own field. So for number four, you have there the limited user. So basic competence is limited to familiar situation, has frequent problems in understanding and expressions, is not able to use complex language. For number three, you have the extremely limited user. It conveys and understands only general meaning in very familiar situation. Frequent breakdowns in communication occur. While in number two, you have the intermittent user. No real communication is possible except for the most basic information using isolated words or short formulae in familiar situation, and to meet immediate needs has great difficulty in understanding spoken and written English. And number one is the non-user. Essentially has no ability to use the language beyond possibly and a few isolated words. So I hope you can actually use this. You can actually use this in your student. Maybe if you think that the standard is too high, maybe you can modify it, but at least make sure that you are basing it from the IELTS band description. So um to sum up my discussion, this is according to the study of Mushtaq and Khan way back in 2012. They found out that if students have strong oral communication skills and have strong grip on the language, it increases the performance of the students. So way back in my study, I also found the same, that if your students are good in oral communication skills, they have a strong grip and they are confident. They are confident to share their ideas on class. They are confident to answer. They are confident to participate in the oral discussion. They are confident to share and to give insights regarding your discussion or your topic in class. And that is a good performance. That is what we always look for with our students. Okay, so before I end my discussion, that's the end of my discussion for this evening. But please let me end it with this quotation from John Powell, that communication works for those who work at it. For me, it's very evident. I totally agree with John Powell that communication works for those who work at it. You have to strive hard. You have to put efforts. You have to study. You have to read. You have to work on with your diction, with your pronunciation, with your vocab. You have to work on for communication. For you to be an effective communicator, you have to work for it. It will not be just a sleep overnight that you will be good in communication. It's not just as if you are just eating a piece of cake, but you have to strive harder and work harder for it. We all work hard for being a good and effective communicator. We have to express ourselves freely and effectively, and we should always give and put efforts in everything that we do. So these are the references that I have uses in my discussion. Again, thank you everyone for listening in my discussion. I hope I have imparted my knowledge. I hope that I am able to give um, knowledge for everyone, those who are listening for this evening. Again, thank you everyone.
Thank you, ma'am, for your marvelous presentation. Actually, ma'am, for speaking fluency, practice is more important. Thank you, ma'am, for your presentation.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me. I am very much honored. I am very much honored to be one of the speaker in IG.
Thank you, ma'am. We are very grateful for you.
Okay, so are we now on the question and answer portion, or they will be having the quiz first, sir?
Yes, ma'am. After short video clips, we move to quiz competition, and after quiz competition, we move to Q&A, question and answer part.
Okay, okay.
Thank you,
So
ma'am.
I'll be waiting for them, but I'll be here for standby. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Dear participants, after short video clips, we move to quiz and competition. Today, today quiz code is IGP quiz. The code is IGP quiz. Let's start our quiz. Our first question is communication helps student to shape idea and concept. Is it true or false? Communication helps student to shape idea and concept. Is it true or false? Wow, our 100% our participant gave the correct answer, and the correct answer is true. Anna Maria is leading the first position, and the following Aigal Firas Akbar. Our second question is in the Philippines, the belief of learning is an axiom increasingly reflected in the range of educational context. Is it true or false? Only 5% of our participants give the correct answer, and the correct answer is false. Nicodem Esmero is leading the first position. Our third question is Gardener is the one who processes the multiple intelligence of learners. Is it true or false? 93% of our participants give the correct answer, and the correct answer is true. Artior is the leading the first position. Nicodemus Miro is also leading the second position. Our fourth question is ESL means English as second language. Is it true or false? 88% of our participants give the correct answer, and the correct answer is true. Artior is also leading the first position. Nicodem Miro is leading the second position. Our next question is in language acquisition, one should focus on the characteristics of language rather than the characteristics of the learners. Is it true or false? 59% of our participants give the correct answer, and the correct answer is false. RTO is also leading the first position. Our next question is successful oral communication is to be able to manage both transactional and interjectional dialogue. Is it true or false? Interjection. 98% of our participants give the correct answer, and the correct answer is true. Arthur is leading the first position. Our next question is accuracy is defined as being able to write quickly or easily in a given language. Is it true or false? 58% of our participants give the correct answer, and the correct answer is false. Arthur is also leading the seventh position. He gives 7 out of 7 answer correctly. Our next second question is oral communication is simply reading text aloud. Is it true or false? 84% of our participants give the correct answer, and the correct answer is false. Our next question is stress in speech is the division of phrase or words while speaking. Is it true or false? 36% of our participants give the correct answer, and the correct answer is false. Now, Firas Akbar is leading the first position. Lamberto Espilaten is also leading the second position. Our final question is a good rate of speech range from 140 to 160 words per minute. Is it true or false? 86% of our participants get the correct answer, and the correct answer is true. Congratulations our 10 top 10 participants. Firoz Akbar is leading the first position. The following second is Lamberto, third is Lisaraya, fourth is Rodolfo, and fifth is Arthur. Welcome, ma'am.
Yes, I am now ready for the question and answer portion of our discussion tonight.
Thank you, ma'am. Dear participants are requested to ask their question in comment box. So, ma'am, our first question from Firoz Akbar is also a speaker from IGP. The question is how would you tackle the following problem? Your student want you to improve their fluency in English who are not fluent enough in their own language.
I think you can manage to help them or to at least guide them to be fluent in English with their own language in a sense that you manage to give them tasks that are actually addressing that particular skills that they wanted to improve. I mean, if they are not really fluent with their own language, they need to work on that before moving on with the second language, because just like what we have discussed by Chomsky, I think you need to have to master your own language first, or your mother tongue, before moving on with another language. That is the theory under the second language acquisition. So they have first to focus and their in their own language before moving on to another language.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next question also from Priyas Akbar. Why do students alter in conversational English despite the fact they may be good at formal English or bookish English? How would you deal with such cases?
There are students who actually falter in conversational English, despite how good I am. Was I did actually mention it earlier that there are some students who are really good in talking, but then if they are in front of everyone else, in let's say they are in the classroom speaking with their discussing it in front of all of the class, they tend to be nervous. They tend to have the what we so called stage fright. And we can deal with that through practicing. I always, one of my students who actually have stage fright, I always ask him to practice the speech in front of a mirror or in front of a television where there are noises, sounds, because sometimes students tend to be distracted with the sudden sounds that they actually hearing once they are talking. So I always tell them to practice at home in front of the mirror as if you are looking to somebody else, or to practice in front of a television where there are live TV broadcasts, as if they are your audience and you wouldn't be distracted with the noises that they are making.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next question from Donoxum. How many words should know to be a perfect speaker?
You know what? There is no exact number of words that you should know, as long as and I don't think there is a perfect speaker. Sorry, but I don't think that there is a perfect speaker, because no matter how good you are in speaking the second language or speaking English, there would be always time that you would be committing errors, whether you like it or not. You will be committing errors. Even me, if I am a teacher of language for several years now, there are some instances that I actually still doing grammatical flaws or errors. So there is no specific number of words, but if you are a wide reader, you can manage to pick up the fish of words that is actually appropriate with what you are talking. So if you are lacking of a particular word, if you are a wide reader, if you have a lot of vocabulary, you can actually pick up of other words instead of that correct or exact word that you have in mind. Okay, so the question is, how do you develop and assess students' fluency and accuracy in language in new normal setup? In the new normal setup that we have, in my study, I have discussed this speaking fluency and accuracy of students, because this was actually my thesis, my masteral thesis. So what I did was I have prepared a task-based material that I did actually give for my students to assess the level of fluency and accuracy of the language that they have, based on the result of that particular task-based material. Task-based materials that involving language activities and language discussions through oral and verbal setup. So though for those who are in our normal setup, in a classroom basis, I managed to give written outputs, written task-based material, and oral task-based material. So that is what I did to measure or to assess their fluency and accuracy in the language. Okay, another question is, Ma'am Rosanne, how could we help our students who stutter in speaking both in native and English language? So I would always say that it's a matter of confidence, is a matter of building their confidence, their self-confidence that they can actually do it. I always push my students to talk as if nobody is listening, or talk as if you are just alone in the room. If you are afraid to talk in front of everyone else, I always ask them to practice in front of the mirror and look at yourself. Look at yourself in the eye and tell them to state or to speak normally. Okay, as if they are just talking with their friends. If they are still stuttering in the native language, we will still go back. That you have to build the confidence. You have to put the confidence in them before letting them I'm sorry, to speak in front of everyone else.
Sorry, ma'am, for unmute my microphone.
It's okay. I managed to read the questions.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay,
Our next
can
question
I
from
just read?
Calvin.
Okay.
To everyone,
So to
please
every
drop.
I'm sorry, you may read the question.
Yes, ma'am. Our next question is it really helpful for the student if we translate English into their mother tongue when we teaching?
I would say that it's helpful in a sense that they manage to understood that our mother tongue that we are teaching. I think it's more appropriate in our K to 12 K to 12 curriculum in the Philippines. We give importance to the mother tongue. It is really appropriate that mother tongue was already um, practiced by the students, and they are actually using it before we move on to English. And we are fortunate enough that English is given to our curriculum even in the primary years. But then let's not set aside that we need to practice the mother tongue beforehand before moving it to English. So let's not translate the mother tongue. Instead, work on it and make it as a foundation before we move on to English. I think that would help our students a lot in terms of the effective communication.
Our next question from Naranjaman. How to be a good speaker in today's new normal setup?
To be a good speaker, you have to be a good listener. Just like what I am always telling with my students that if you are talking, you need to be also a good listener. That if somebody else is talking, you need to listen first, do not interrupt, and then if it is your chance to talk, then you can talk. So being a good speaker does not only requires good grammars, vocabulary, dictions, and pronunciation. It is also the manner, your attitude when you are speaking. So it does not only focuses on the technical terms, but also with the attitude of the speaker.
Thank you, ma'am. Today we have lots of questions. That means our participants are active in the webinar.
I'll take this as a compliment, sir.
Our next question from Lambert to Platin. Which is better in accessing the international English proficiency, LTS or TOEFL? Why? Thank you, ma'am.
Actually, both of them are are good. When we are talking about IELTS, it is merely used in the United States, in the UK. But then I think TOEFL was used in those countries who considered English as a foreign language. Because in IELTS, these are tests given to those people who actually had English as the second language, while TOEFL is given to those countries whom English is considered as foreign language. So I think there's no better. They are both good and they are both equal.
Next question from Robin. How can we help our student to be accurate and fluent in the class?
We can actually help our students to be accurate and fluent by just guiding them. We just have to guide them. We just have to give them activities that would enhance and that would develop their speaking ability. Let us not focus first on how to be accurate, on how to be fluent. Let us first be focused on how they can actually express themselves. They need first to express themselves. And once they are actually good, doing good and expressing
Crispiniano.
themselves,
Cris-
you can now work on with the accuracy and fluency.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next question from Crispiniano. Ma'am, can we consider a pause in between a word in a sentence as a form of gap, filler, or disfluency?
We can consider those pauses or hesitation as disfluency. But for them to be identified as gap filler, there should be it is a gap filler from the word itself because there's something that you fill in accidentally. Just like the words in Filipino, the word so, commonly the word so, the word okay, we use that as a gap filler. But then pauses, those are not considered as gap fillers. As gap fillers should be something that you actually filled. It should be the words that are considered that are sudden utterances. Those are the sudden utterances. But then if it is just a pause, then you can just consider it as a pause. But a lot of pauses could actually change the meaning of a certain sentences. So you should be conscious or cautious with the uses of those pauses.
Our next question from John Paul. What strategy can you suggest to encourage students to speak more, especially during online classes?
What I do to promote my students into talking in front of, because now we are in the pandemic, I'm also having my online classes. So I encourage them to talk if I'm giving a topic which is into their liking. Once I've discussed about literature, Greek mythology, and those romanticism novels, they wouldn't talk because they don't want those stuff. So what I do is I manage to give topics that are into social medias, into those social media platforms, those online games, and those topics who are actually students are more interested to. That is the strategy that I am using to manage them to talk and to be encouraged to encourage them to speak a lot in our discussion. I give topics that actually gets or into their interest.
Our next question from Indira. Should we teach only grammar or teach in situational in it would be effectively?
We can discuss grammar and relate it to situational purposes. For example, I think it would be more effective if those grammar are being put into situation, their everyday life situation, so they could actually apply it. If you are teaching grammar, make sure you uses of sentences that they can actually use in their everyday life.
Our next question is increasing word recognition skills sufficient for developing fluency?
Yes, increasing word recognition skills could actually help one speaker to develop fluency because the more that you recognize these particular words, the more vocabularies that you can actually give, the more that you are being able to avoid hesitation and stops in your speech. So it's good.
Our next question from Maria. Hello, ma'am. Which is best in expressing a statement with an article or without an article but with the same thought?
Actually, the use of article is underlying on the syntax and the grammatical rules. There are some instances that article could stand alone, or I mean the noun, for example, itself, the subject can stand alone without the article. But then, if you are just stating a word, then you can have it without an article. But then, if you are having a phrase, for example, a noun phrase or a verb phrase, it should always come with an article because a phrase would be complete with an article and the part of speech.
Our next question is speaking skill may be shaped by several factors like voice quality, intelligibility, and variety.
Yes, speaking these particular voice quality and so with the hand gestures, with the movement of your eyes, with your physical appearance, these are all factors of speaking skills. I just didn't mention it earlier because I think the topic would be too much broad if I'll be discussing it thoroughly in this discussion. In our discussion, I just merely focus on the speaking fluency and accuracy alone. But these factors still can contribute to speaking skills effectively.
Ma'am, we have lots of compliment
Yes,
for
thank you
you.
very much. And thank you for the opportunity, IGP, to share my knowledge and my insights regarding this topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. We have lots of compliment. Lots of compliment. Thank you, ma'am, for sharing your experience with us. You're an outstanding speaker. Thanks from IGP.
Thank you, IGP,
Ma'am, you have
and
any
for all the
recommendation for
listeners.
if you have any recommendation for our participant, you can share your expression.
Thank you everyone, and thank you for the active listeners. I've been a huge fan. I've been a follower of IGP, and I know that we always learn. We manage to learn in terms of this social media platforms that is IGP is always offering to us. So again, thank you everyone.
Thank you, ma'am, for your outstanding presentation. We hope we meet together in another live session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dear participant, today program name is Speaking Fluency and Accuracy of Students, and today's code is IGP 5958. The code is IGP 5958.